I'm glad to hear that refugiums are popular here in Australia. It's a very simple concept. Having another aquarium connected to your display aquarium makes it very easy to explain to your spouse that you haven't actually set up another aquarium, it's the filter. Right? But sure, you know, you're going to still buy things and put it in that refugium, right? I wrote an article several years back, this was back in 2005, and it was published in a Japanese magazine just talking all about refugiums. They made this nice little illustration that just shows, you know, connecting the aquarium in and out from the main display, and that's how it can be done in the simplest sense. Of course, you can also have the refugium underneath the aquarium in your sump. Many people do that. I like having them next to the aquarium because then it becomes that separate display that isn't really a display. I think that with Refugia we will see finally some success with corals like Dendronepthia. And the reason why I believe Refugia will do it is not so much that the Refugia will provide the food for the Dendronepthia, it's really the other way around. You can put the Dendronepthia in a refugium in a small volume, say 10 or 20 gallons of water. Connect that to your main display, which might be 100, 200, or 300 gallons. And your main display then would be the biological filter that would allow you to put boatloads of food into the smaller refugium so that that coral can survive. So keeping sun polyps, the Tubostrea, and soft corals like Dendronepthia is possible when you give them sufficient food. But then the water quality suffers, and the way you get around that is by having it connected to a larger volume of water. Jellyfish aquariums, and even in Refugia, it's a possibility. The jellyfish aquariums are starting to grow in popularity in the USA. The main obstacle to them, they are different from your average aquarium, and there's two obstacles. One, there's a high cost for the system, the setup, and two, the availability of the animals. The jellyfish are only sporadically available, and not all jellyfish can be maintained in a home-size aquarium. Food is not a problem. We now have easy access to the baby Artemia, as well as cyclopes and other types of copepods that can be fed to jellyfish. And there are jellyfish that are photosynthetic, like this one, Phylorhiza, which I'm sure you have this in Australia, and Cassiopeia. They're easy to keep in a small aquarium. All they need is light, just like a coral. So there are some in the upper right and lower left corner. Those two stay relatively small. They have zooxanthellae and could be kept. The upper left and lower right, those are the moon jellies, which I know you have here. I saw some in the harbor the other day. They're a little bit more challenging. They grow quite a bit larger. They need a larger display. I've already mentioned refugiums for filtration, but I hadn't mentioned algae a whole lot. Do you use this alga here, Chetomorpha? Nobody's seen it? This stuff is wonderful. I'm sure it grows here. It's all over the world. Chetomorpha linum. It just looks like a big Brillo pad. Does that make sense here? Do you use the word Brillo here? Because that's a brand name. And it just continues to grow rapidly, and if you want to harvest it, you just reach in there and pull out a bit of it. And it will just fill up a refugium space. Wonderful filter. But then, of course, there's always Caulerpa and mud and things like that to serve as a refugium filter. I mentioned bare bottom earlier. This is what you can do with a bare bottom tank. Just basically let the corals grow right on it. I saw a terrific, one of the nicest reef aquariums I've ever seen. Recently, it was about 3 months ago. I was in Baltimore, and there's an avid hobbyist there who is an angelfish freak, but he also is a reef aquarist. And he has about 125-gallon reef aquarium, bare bottom, and I didn't do a count, but there's probably about 50 species of Acropora in this tank. I'm not joking. And they're not just little bitty frags. They're, you know, they've grown. They're some pretty big colonies, and they're all intertwined, growing into each other. Also Montipora and Stylophora, Seriatopora, Caeciliphora, mainly SPS corals, and angelfish. a lot of light and unbelievable amounts of water flow. It just was, for what he had done, it was truly impressive. I was astonished at how successful it was given the relative lack of biological filtration. He had very little in the way of substrate in the tank, so that meant that that huge mass of corals was really assimilating the main body of food that wasn't being removed by protein skimming. And he had a lot of fish, so he was feeding it pretty heavily. It's possible. It can be done.
He had no skimmer?
He had skimming. He had skimming, but really so little substrate in the tank that from a biological filtration point of view, I would not recommend starting an aquarium that way. Clearly, he started out and it grew into that level. You wouldn't set up an aquarium, boom, right from the beginning with a bunch of corals and not much in the way of biological filtration. Okay.